Thank you all for taking your time out of your day today to join us for today's Workforce Knowledge Series. We're very fortunate to have a great lineup of guest speakers joining us. We'll begin with Kendra Rinksmeyer, our agency's Director of Workforce Development, and Tanya Charlton, our Employment Program Manager, who will walk us through more details on the new AI training for South Dakota Businesses Initiative. They'll partner with Samantha South. Samantha brings 16 years of experience driving AI adoption while working with Fortune 500 companies such as IBM, Aliens, and Microsoft, delivering over $500 million in savings, and now helps South Dakota businesses do the same through her Sioux Falls-based practice, Harvest AI. And we'll wrap up our presentation. We'll be joined by Morgan Hewer, our education and industry specialist, along with Hannah Rizik, our workforce development specialist, who plan to cover free upskilling resources available to South Dakota employers. So let's get started. Please welcome our first set of speakers, Kendra Rinksmeyer, Tanya Charlton, and Samantha South.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And Garrett, thank you for the introduction. Wanted to take a few moments to highlight a funding opportunity that is available to help with upskilling your workforce. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and walk through a couple of slides. Okay, we recently released a competitive application to help with upskilling your workforce for South Dakota businesses to apply for as it relates to the adoption of AI in their workforce and in their business. This is all done in a partnership with the Governor's Office of Economic Development. Wanted to give a shout out to Lori Swanson on the call today, our partner over there, as well as the State Chamber. We're working with Ryan and Allie. Thank them for their partnership to do this, and then also with the South Dakota Workforce Development Council. So why are we doing this? As we know, artificial intelligence is here. And it's really changing rapidly, and it really creates an opportunity for businesses to be able to create their efficiencies, improve their competitiveness, and we want to be here to support that. So if we can help to provide some resources to upskill the workforce, that's what we want to do. Again, this funding is available to businesses that are in South Dakota, and I do have a brief link to our website here so that you can go check that out if you have not done that yet. All right, we've got 3 categories of funding that we're looking at. The first category is really for that business who
is... on a call, and I don't have speakers. My speakers when it's all connected don't work.
Thank you to whoever navigated that for me. The first category here is really for this business who maybe is unsure of where to start with AI, but really want to kind of look at this and determine where it could fit. So the state is looking to offer a one-to-one cost sharing with the business. All payments are going to be made to the business, but in order or for a dollar amount not to exceed $5,000. So they would work with a third-party consultant to identify what or where they could implement, what tools might be available, how they can create that cost savings for their business, and then they would apply for that. The application on this one here, we're looking at what challenges are you facing, what are you looking to make improvements to, and then what consultant would you be interested in working with or would you partner with to provide this guidance and feedback and input to your business. So that's what we're looking for in that. Category 2, this one. For the business, it's like, we know what we want to do, we know what tools we need to implement, and this is really, we just want to have some resources to help us train our employees to make that happen. This would also be a one-to-one cost share with that business. The total training cost would not exceed $20,000 for the resources that the state would be putting in. So the training could cost more than that, but that would be on the business. So up to 50% of that would for a total of $20,000 investment from the state. We would only be reimbursing for the cost of that training. Tanya, I'm going to toss it to you and have you talk a little bit about the application on category 2, as there's a little more detail here.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, looking at our category 2. So what we're needing here is we need you to actually have the training provider in mind, because you're going to need to include all that information here on this application, because that's what's going to go into your contract. So we're looking for the training provider's name and that information. Now, your purposes, are you going to be using this as a layoff prevention, or is it really just to retain your skilled workforce? So make sure you select one of those boxes and then include your training length time, the costs listed there. We're also asking for the training outline and cost details to be attached to the application, and then just select whatever boxes apply to you for what this training is relating to. And then if you want to move on, perfect. So on the next portion here of the application, we're looking at what is the actual tool or skill that you're looking to have your employees master during that time. Fill that out here. So an example might be that there's a new software or equipment that will help expedite your process. So we're going to list that out there in that major training requirements. And then under the return on investment, looking for what is this going to help your business? How is this going to help you? Is it going to provide savings in time, money, improve customer experience? Really just looking for some detail there on how that's going to help your business move forward and your employees. And then the last portion here under category 2, this is where you're going to list the information about your employees. So who is going to be taking the course or courses or do the training, and information about their employment. And then under the training details here, we really want to know how this training is going to relate to the employee's current job duties or their future job duties if they're going to transition into a new role. Hearing about how this is really going to impact your employees with this AI training. So you'll complete that section as well. And I think that's all that we have for category 2.
Okay. Third category is really kind of the base level awareness of artificial intelligence. I know this is an area where we've been focusing right now in our agency or on my team of really just becoming familiar with the AI tools, what's available, how it might be able to assist us. So we have some different training suggestions that are available here that we've linked to on the website. We have not vetted these. We do not support one over the other, but really just kind of creating awareness. And we do realize that there's a cost to training your workforce. And so we will award the business up to $1,000 per employee that completes that training, and we get those certificate of completion. That will not exceed $10,000. On this application, you can see here that we are just looking, what is it that you're wanting to do? What training will you utilize? How many employees do you anticipate to complete the training? And what certificate those employees will earn. So just really making sure you have a plan for that. Oh, hang on a second here. I wanted to highlight our timeline. Hopped right over that. So we do have an application out on our website as shared. I'll share that again here in a moment, that website, but there's an application for you to walk through, complete, submit that by August 7th. There are details out there. There's information on the contract terms and more details that you can take a look at, including a final report that would be submitted prior to that June 30th of 2027, when all training must be completed and done at that time. We do have, because this is a limited amount of resources that we have available for this, we do have a review committee. The Workforce Development Council will be awarding and identifying awardees on August 25th during our meeting at that time, and then we'll proceed with establishing contracts. We do have a potential for a second application deadline there for November based on resources, if they are still available or not. More information to come after we get through this first piece here. Businesses can apply for more than one category. If there is more than one category that fits their needs, that is a possibility as well. So next, we have asked to have Sam South join us just to share a little bit more about what might be available to businesses in that category 1 that are really like unsure of what tool do I need to use, how do I identify where to insert artificial intelligence into my business practices. And so I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Sam South.
Thank you, Kendra. And Kendra, let me get set up. And also, can you let me know, I moved to a new location where we're working with the internet provider. I hope that it holds up for me, but if you could just let me know if it gets to be too skippy or not, just let me know.
And if you would like, Sam, I also have your slide deck I could share too to help out. So you just let me know.
Okay. I am seeing that I'm not able to share my slides. So it says that only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Well, how about I do that for you here? Okay.
Okay, well, good morning and thank you all for being here. I know I'm very excited and thank you for the Department of Labor for putting this series together. The goal of at the end of this 15 minutes, what I'm trying to I hope you walk away with is first, just talking a little bit about what is generative AI, how does it work, and how is it different from other forms of AI? Second, why are we suddenly hearing about it everywhere? What specifically changed? Third, how you and your team can actually use it. I'll show you a real example so you can kind of see what this looks like and things to be thinking about. And fourth, just some practical tips for figuring out where and how to use it in your business so you leave with a good starting point. So before we get into this, 30 seconds quickly on who I am, although Garrett did introduce me. So I was born and raised in Brookings, South Dakota. I left South Dakota to pursue a career in tech, where I spent the last 15 years integrating AI inside Fortune 500 companies. So at Allianz Life, they sell annuities and life insurance. I built their first data science practice. So just for a quick definition, what exactly is a data science practice? So before there was Claude and ChatGPT, companies hired data scientists who had very specific skill set to focus on building and integrating AI into their business operations. During the time at Allianz, we delivered over 300 million in premium growth and over 3 million in savings across underwriting, fraud, and sales. At Microsoft, we stood up their first analyst agent in under a year. And so the result was an organization being able to double their output, but without having to have any additional cost associated with it. Almost 2 years ago now, I decided to move back to South Dakota to be closer to family. So today I do reside in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I will say it feels great to be back home. We'll go to the next slide. Understanding AI. Here is the simplest way I would say I know how to explain it. So we'll say before ChatGPT and Claude, or what we refer to as traditional AI, most AI was built to pick the best answer from a predefined set of options. So what do I mean? Traditionally, we built models to focus on a very specific task that is predicted a very specific category. So like spam, not spam, fraud, not fraud, or approve and deny. So what's interesting is those problems usually have a right answer. And so it was easier to measure whether AI was correct, and it was easier to explain how AI made the decision. Well, generative AI works very differently. So instead of choosing from a fixed list, it predicts the next piece of language based off everything that came before it. So essentially, very simplistically, it's predicting the next word very easily. It's oversimplifying things, but I think it helps get the concept across a little easier. And it builds entirely new content one step at a time. So that's what allows us to write the emails, to summarize the documents, or explain a complex idea in English. But because it's generating new content rather than retrieving an answer, you can't assume that everything it produces is correct, and it's harder to verify. The one thing that I want you to take away from this explanation is this, that whenever you're working with AI, you have to make sure you're matching the right tools and the right technology to the task or the outcome that you are trying to solve. Generative AI is not going to be your solution for everything. So for example, if there's a single right answer that matters in the task that or the outcome that you're trying to solve, for example, a financial figure, a legal fact, or a compliance decision, usually traditional AI is better at doing those things than generative AI. Doesn't mean generative AI can't, but you would need to put in the right controls and checks to make sure that the output is correct. If the goal is creating like a first draft or brainstorming ideas or summarizing information, generative AI is excellent. And so the biggest thing that I want you to take away from this slide is, again, you got to match the right tools and technology to the tasks or outcomes that you're focused on trying to solve. So if you go to the next slide, so why is everyone suddenly talking about it, and why now? So here's what actually changed. It's not that AI got a lot more capable, it did, but it's who can use it. So it used to take a team of specialists, often referred to as data scientists, to build AI. Now anyone who can write a sentence can put it to work. So for example, in my introduction, when I talked about building the AI practice at Allianz, you needed a team of data scientists, which was a multi-million-dollar investment just to get started. Today, that same kind of capability starts about $20 a month and uses plain English. And remember, the fundamentals of business are not changing. Whoever does it faster, cheaper, or better wins. And so it got a whole lot easier to play in this space. And so what used to be a capability that only big companies could afford is now a capability that everybody can take advantage of. And I think, especially as I move back to South Dakota, I think this is a very exciting opportunity for South Dakota because it got a whole lot cheaper to take advantage. And when I look at the labor force or lack thereof in South Dakota, it's a very excellent capability that companies can leverage within their own company. So I think it's a very exciting time. And so that's why the pressure is real. I think the good news is that I always tell people the first thing to get started is just to start with one clearly defined problem and start from there. So how do people actually put this to work? There are 3 ways that we typically see people work with AI. So automation is one where AI does the work for you, following very explicit instructions. This works well when you have a very clear outcome in mind. You know what you want your output to look like. This is where this type of AI works really well. It does not work well if you have to have a lot of judgment. If there's a lot of vagary, this does not work. Augmentation is you and AI collaboratively work together. I think we're familiar if you're using it to write emails and stuff, this would be an example. But this works when solutions aren't as straightforward and you need to explore and experiment. It's like your problem-solving creative partner. It doesn't do work for you, but it helps you do work better, if you will. And then agency, which I would say 2026 in a lot of companies, it's all about agentic AI, if you will. It's where a lot of companies are seeing the ROI. I gave you the example in the beginning too at Microsoft, how we built an analyst agent. So essentially this agent does the task that normally an analyst would do at a certain performance threshold really well, but it does it independently. And so that's an example of agentic AI where AI does work independently on your behalf. It's not that one is better than the other. Again, remember, you've got to focus on how do you engage with it? It really depends on the task or outcome that you're trying to focus on solving. But one thing that is different about these 3 ways of engaging with AI is trust. Trust is a big deal in this space right now, and trust is earned the same way with AI as it is with people. You have to start small, you have to verify, you have to build confidence in the results that it produces, and then you expand from there. So I'll give you one example, and I'm just going to walk through this one to show you kind of what it looks like to implement AI into your workflow, just the level of detail and specificity that it does require. Kendra, would you mind going to the last slide? Or the one where I'm doing the use case with the realtor. So I'll give you just a quick example here. So you're selling a home, you have to call a realtor. And before a realtor can tell you what to list your home at, they have to do a market assessment. And how it typically works is a realtor will go to a database, so MLS, and they'll They'll filter the data on specific criteria. They export that data. They look for 20 data points, if you will. They take those 20 data points, they key it into a PowerPoint presentation, they complete their assessment, they package it, and they send it off to the client to say, hey, based off this assessment, this is what we recommend your property should be listed at. One of the things I just want to draw to your attention is whenever you're implementing AI, you are going down to that great level of detail. You are understanding where the data is that you're getting. You're understanding how many data points you're extracting. You're understanding where those data points need to go in a PowerPoint. You're understanding where that file needs to be saved on a computer. That's the level of granularity and detail that you need to get down to understand where AI makes sense within your business operations. So what we did is we first standardized the PowerPoint template, then we built a workflow where she just drops the data file into Claude. Claude reads the file, fills in every field of those 20 data points, and it hands back a finished PowerPoint. The whole thing, we created a skill. Skill means we just gave it very explicit instructions exactly what to do. That saved, on average, 3.5 weeks per year. And here's the thing I want to bring to your attention. The task was not glamorous. It was monotonous, but it was easy. And these are your prime opportunities within companies, is to find those examples where you're doing repetitive work, where AI can step in and help you automate it. While it doesn't seem like a big deal, when you aggregate the amount of time you're spending on these small tasks, it ends up being a very big deal. And 3.5 weeks for a solo realtor is a big time savings. And that's the benefit of using this technology, is just how much time it's giving back to a lot of these business owners. So when you think about, okay, now if you want to go back a few slides, Kendra, sorry for that. So how do you find yours, like where your opportunities are within your company? I gave you some, key questions to ask. You can go to the next slide, Kendra. So just key questions to ask yourself, about how to identify the work that you should, look at taking advantage of with AI. But one of the biggest things I would tell you, if I were to step back and say, no matter who I'm working with, whether it's in the company or you're hiring a consultant, is whatever they're recommending to you, step back and say, for me to make this work, what do I all need to change in my business or my operations to make this successful? That will be a very key critical question for you to understand. If it's a large change, I would just pause, and I'll get to that for a while, why that is the case. But oftentimes it's going to be incremental change that you can implement, and you have to really have a good grasp on what exactly are they asking you to change, how much time and effort will it take you, and what will it give you in return? I think those are very key questions for any business leaders to be asking themselves when they're working with vendors, and making sure you're really in understanding the answers to those questions. It's very important too, if you're working with vendors who are trying to solve you products, how much change would your business operations need to change to make their product work? If you have a generic business process, it sometimes will work and is the best solution. But if you have a very customized solution, a lot of times those things do not work well off the shelf, and you really have to do a lot of customization to make it work. So I want to close with just what 15 years taught me in this space. So there were 6 lessons that I highlighted, but I'll focus on 3. First, and I hope this is a key takeaway, identify the problem, and the tool will become obvious. Sometimes the right tool won't even be AI. Remember, you are not solving for AI. You are trying to get your time back. So make sure you really identify the problem, not the tool. Second, the larger the behavior change, the harder the adoption. We underestimate as humans how hard it is to change our behaviors and change our workflows. And you will notice this whenever you get into the AI implementation space. It's not necessarily the technology, It's the behavior change that is either going to be a barrier to your success in adopting this or not. It is just very hard to change behaviors. And also remember, there is a lot of distrust. Remember when generative AI came out, the largest narrative that was going around was that it was going to eliminate jobs. So you have to understand too that there is fear of job loss around this technology. And so that's also going to help, that's also going to make it harder to make people want to change their behaviors. And the third thing is the model only knows what you give it. So this is the last lesson on this slide, which is context. The biggest thing that I tell people is with this technology, one, it's made me a better leader and a better communicator. And why is that? In order for you to have this technology work really well for you, you have to provide it a lot of context. And so what is context? It needs to know the why. Like, why are you asking it to do something? What does success look like? What do you need it to do? You have to clearly communicate it to this technology. We were raised on Google, right? In order to successfully have a successful Google search, we were always taught less is more. You identify the key terms, and it will help you get a better search result. With generative AI, that is not the case. More is better. You want to provide lots of context. So if you're trying to get great results with one sentence, you are not providing this technology with enough context. Context looks like paragraphs, not like one sentence or a few words. So last thought, we are the first generation integrating this technology into our work, into our business, into our lives, which means that the people who are willing to experiment are the ones who are writing the playbook of what this will look like. And so I strongly encourage you, start small, but start with a real problem. But most importantly, start because you are helping shape how this will look like in our society, in our work. So thank you so much for your time today. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. So Kendra, back to you. And Kendra, thank you so much for helping me with the slides.
Absolutely. Yeah, Sam, thankful to have you back in South Dakota. If what you're hearing Sam talk about is maybe where you find yourself, I think that's kind of a category 1. And as far as this funding application goes, I really, maybe don't know exactly what to do or what tool, but I need to explore and find out how that best benefits my business. Start with category 1, and that might be a good place. I believe now I get to turn it over to Hannah and to Morgan, and then we can come back to questions later.
Perfect. Thank you, Kendra. For those of you who may have missed the introduction, I'm Hannah Resek with the Department of Labor, and we are going to get things started with kind of talking about building a skilled workforce. And so some of the main things that I do, I should probably share my screen. That would be beneficial. Okay. So now hopefully everyone can see what I'm talking about. Main thing that I do is I host virtual workshops. These workshops are available to all South Dakota residents, and especially those in the workforce. Eligibility or enrollment in a program with us is not required. And the best part is there's no cost to attend. So main things to think about, it's available to everyone and it's free. And so since virtual workshops are one of the biggest pieces of what I do, I wanted to provide you with kind of the topics that we cover. The first one is Bring Your A Game. That focuses on building soft skills and, of course, workplace ethics. So we touch on acceptance, accountability, ambition, appearance, appreciation, attendance, and attitude. The other area we cover is financial literacy, anything that has to do with banking, credit, budgeting, identity theft. And then the third one is job search and retention. Job search and retention focuses on preparing for interviews, utilizing Big Interview, which I'll talk a little bit about here in the next couple of slides. Job searching with South Dakota Works, career exploration, and then one of our most popular ones are resumes, cover letters, and applications. And then the fourth category is justice involved. This one is relatively new. We have these workshops for justice involved individuals that focus on how to job search as well as workplace essentials. So kind of helping them start off with their job search, and then of course how to maintain employment and kind of focus on those soft skills that they may need. And then I just want to point out too, on this slide, there's a QR code as well as the link for you to sign up or register, and registration is required, just to make note of that. The other resource we have here at Department of Labor is what we call North Star Digital Literacy. North Star helps build and demonstrate essential digital skills that are needed for not only everyday life, employment, and education. And what's nice about North Star is it's all assessment based. So you can pick and choose what your need is, and it'll kind of walk you through assessments and give you ideas of what you need maybe to focus on or maybe hone in on a little bit more. Now, this is Big Interview. This is what I had mentioned previously. Big Interview kind of picks up a little bit of that AI talk that Sam had mentioned earlier. It's an online tool that you can use to walk through interview questions, video lessons that gives you AI feedback to help you improve interview skills. So once you record yourself, you go through with these interview questions, you're going to have feedback of where you did really well on, or even have things that maybe need to improve upon. So it's really good to be able to practice that way for interviews to figure out maybe what you need to, correct or work a little bit more towards. On Big Interview, it's not just those interview videos. We also have an area for resumes. There's a resume builder in there, as well as like a resume scanning tool. And so again, resume feedback or AI feedback is included in that as well. So very good resource if you need practice for interviews and maybe just refresh on some of your skills that you might have. This next item or next resource that we have is WorkKeys curriculum. WorkKeys curriculum is intended to help build career relevant skills, especially if it's needed for learning, personal development, and especially job performance. And so there's a lot of different topics that you can work through. Applied math, that's going to be your basic, just math questions, business writing, customer service, financial awareness, graphic literacy, interpersonal and business communications, problem solving and critical thinking, teamwork, work discipline, workplace documents, and then of course, workplace observation. So another great tool to kind of work on and develop those career skills, and even for personal development. This next resource is called Allison. Allison is another one of our free online kind of course provider that offers higher education and diploma courses for a range of students. It was founded in 2007, and Allison has over 4,000 courses, and more than 30 million learners use the e-learning platform. So again, another free resource for you to utilize to kind of develop or work on a range of those workplace or personal skills. So that is what I kind of cover in here at Department of Labor. I know it's a lot of information, but again, we'll have questions at the end. But I'm going to turn it over to Morgan Huber.
Hello, I'm Morgan Hewer, and I'm our education and industry specialist. So I work closely with the secondary schools across South Dakota for work-based learning, but I also help manage two of our upskilling resources. That first one being Bring Your A Game Anywhere. So it is the same 7 A's that Hannah touches on in her virtual workshops. However, this is a self-paced version. You can do it online. At your own pace. There's videos, a little bit of reading, and then a short quiz after each foundational workplace skill. And then at the end, Hannah, I'll have you go ahead and go to the next slide. There's 10 interactive models, so you have a pre-test, the 7 A's, and then there's a little introduction and a closing where you take a final test. If you score 90% or higher, you do receive a certificate of participation. You would just have to reach out to me and we get that completed. They each take about 20 minutes. So if you need to figure out a range of time in which it'll be completed, to get started, you really just need to contact me and then I'll get your account created and then it's pretty hands-off. And you go at your own pace there. The next thing is Grow with Google Career Certificates. So this is a newer program that we offer. We have it through December of 2027. And so there's still some time to utilize it. But Grow with Google provides access to in-demand skills or jobs through independence. It's developed and taught by Google employees. So it's, again, interactive, a little bit of reading, some videos to watch, and some self-paced quizzes. It is hands-on, so you can't just turn it on and step aside. You have to be engaging with it. Hannah, I'll have you go ahead and go to the next slide. Thanks. These are the different certificates that we have. So there's digital marketing and e-commerce, data analytics, business intelligence, IT support, IT automation, UX design, cybersecurity, advanced data analytics, project management, and then we did just add an AI professional certificate as well. So that goes into that AI conversation, and I saw on Kendra's free resources, it's one of those that is listed. And then there's 2 specializations, AI Essentials and Prompting Essentials. These are just a little bit shorter. You still come out with a certificate, it's just not as advanced. And I'll have you go ahead to the next slide. All of the certifications are free and they are from beginner to advanced. When you get your account created, it'll break it down and show you which ones are beginner, which ones are intermediate, and then advanced. They can take anywhere from 4 hours to 6 months to complete. And the 6-month courses are suggested at 10 hours a week. So if you are able to do more than that each week, you'll complete it a little bit faster. Again, independent, self-paced, free. You can complete as many as you wish. It's not like you sign up for one and can't complete any other. So if you are wanting some of your staff to work on the AI skills and the project management, they are able to access both courses. Hannah, next. And then just gaining access. You can go to the DLR website and we have a Grow with Google tab. Someone from DLR must create your account. If you go to the Coursera website and create your own account, you can't access the DLR free licenses that we have. So someone from DLR has to create your account. If you yourself just want to do it independently, contact either your business service representative that you've been working with or just one of the local offices. If you're looking for a large group access, so say you want all of your employees to participate into something, you can go ahead and get a hold of me and I can set up all those accounts for you. And then I think I have one more, Hannah. So all of the resources that Hannah and I talked about are located on this last slide with QR codes directed to the DLR website. If you need some refreshing, I know we walked through them fast. But that is what we have. And I do think we have one more slide, and I'll turn it back over to the business service team so they can touch base on this closing.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan. Yeah, some great information there. Before we go into our closing remarks, I was curious if anybody has any questions, we can get them addressed before we start buttoning this up. You can go ahead and type them in the chat if you don't want to speak up, or you can go ahead and speak up and we can get them answered.
Hi, can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, quick question on the AI program, the funding and how that works. If we have those training providers, Google, Anthropic, the initiative, is there a third-party qualifications for AI training? Because there's an other checkbox. What other training? And then I have another question after that one.
Yeah, I can take that one, I think, Garrett. So there's likely other trainings out there, and so that's kind of why we're putting that other down there. We just want to make sure that you're working with, somebody that is somewhat reputable or known. So we don't want to limit what you're selecting to offer there, but also want to make sure that it is a training that we can go on and see and know that it leads to that certificate of completion before we would ever do any money reimbursement to the employer.
Awesome. Okay. And then the next question is, if we take advantage of training now, and then we get approved for the grant funding, for example, I pay for training now, I get an AI assessment done for my business now, and then I get approved in August. Can it be reimbursed for my July training that I did? Or do I have to wait until I'm approved and then sign up for the training and then get reimbursed for that process? And then I've got one more question after that. And I swear I'll be quiet.
I can
I appreciate the questions. I might need to think through that one a little bit more than I am able to right now. But when we're through the application process, we're really just wanting to make sure that you have a plan in place. So, category 2 might be something that you look at where you already have a plan, you already know what tool you're going to implement, and you're just needing to kind of bolster your training for your workforce. That might be a good category 2.
Right. Yep. And I was just wondering, if I buy category 2 training for my workforce today, and I get approved funding for August, in September, can I submit my today's training receipt to you guys since it's approved, even though the training was before I was approved? That was kind of my question.
Sure. It likely be outside the terms of that contract. So that contract period wouldn't have started yet.
Okay. And then, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what we have said in the past is that you should wait to start up your training until you receive that contract that's signed, because you wouldn't obviously be guaranteed. So that's the guidance that we've given out thus far, is get your application in and plan for a September start date. And then again, you're still taking the chance that there's potential that you may not receive the award, and then you'd be responsible for it if you've already signed up and agreed to it. So.
Okay. And then the last question is there implementation? Let's say a training company wants to come in and help me implement. Is that covered as well? Because the language on the submission forms does use implementation language, meaning can a company come in and train me and help me train, but then I need some of their hands to help me implement some of this stuff and do some automation builds for my company as well. Will that count under that grant or that matching? If my workforce is being trained and then they're coming in and kind of helping implement the solution as well in conjunction with that, is that in spirit of this as well?
The focus of this really, that's a great question. The focus of this really is on partnering with businesses to train their workforce on on artificial intelligence, on the tools that they're implementing. So that's really the intention of this. Maybe at some point we'll have the resources to help with, implementing artificial intelligence or, purchasing the tools, but really not what we're seeking with this opportunity that we have right now.
That's great. Thank you so much, guys.
Perfect. Great questions. We do have a few more in the chat, so I'll read them off. Kendra, this might be for you. In category 3, how many of the training sessions does your employer or your employees need to complete to be eligible for the $1,000? Do they need to complete all of the trainings that are listed or just one of them?
That's a great question. So under category 3, as you get into these, if you were going to choose like the Grow with Google AI Professional Certificate, you would go through that whole certificate, and that would be your certificate of completion that you would submit for reimbursement or for that $1,000. So you don't have to complete all 10 bullets that we have on the category 3. And I could maybe share my screen here. Okay. So if the question is, do I need to complete all of these trainings before receiving the $1,000? That's not the case. But you would likely pick like one of these maybe. And as you go through this, there's usually a certificate of completion that you'd be able to receive to submit. Hopefully that answers that question.
Perfect. The next question was, is the funding intended for training only or for covering the cost of AI tools and licenses?
Yep, great question. And I think I answered this one just a little bit ago. But yes, this would just be for the training. The intention of this is really for workforce development, the training of your employees on learning more about artificial intelligence or the tools to implement that. It is not for the tool specifically and to purchase the tool. For category 1, there is the ability to have that cost sharing to work with a third-party consultant to identify what tool you would maybe be implementing.
Perfect. And does anybody else have any other questions?
Hi, Tim with the Dakota Intelligence here. I do have one question for you guys. I think I sent Tanya a whole list of them and she can reply back to me. That's fine. We don't have to cover them here. I did have a question about, does the program have any preference or incentive for employers who use South Dakota-based training providers so the funding stays in state, or is provider location not a factor in scoring or eligibility?
Yes, so for category 1, we are hopeful that that third-party consultant that you'd be working with would be located in the state. I think anytime that we can have in-state providers, that's our hope and goal. However, we also realize that it may not be, possible.
And we do have a scoring matrix that we'll be using as we review the applications with our committee that we have put together of the Workforce Development Council, Governor's Office of Economic Development, the South Dakota Chamber, and Department of Labor. So we'll be reviewing each application and applying that scoring matrix. And one of the questions in there is the training provider or consultant selected a South Dakota business?
Perfect, thank you. One more question for you. I do have a few trainings coming up here at the end of the month for several companies. I was trying to follow along. You said if those trainings take place before the application process, they may not be approved. Was that correct?
Yeah.
So the training would be on like the 29th of this month.
Yep, if you've already, have that in place and we haven't made those awards, it hasn't been approved, we won't be looking to cover the cost of those trainings. Our contracts will start sometime in probably September as soon as we can get those going. After that, the selection committee and the Workforce Development Council have met to identify those awards.
Perfect. That's what I need to let them know. So thank you for that.
Alrighty, we had one more in the chat. Looks like we had it answered.
I do just want to say that one maybe out loud, Garrett. So a question came in.
Yep. So the question come in looking at group access to Grow with Google. Would there be any cost associated with that? It looks like all Grow with Google is free, provided by the state of South Dakota for you guys. The next question we did have here was, can you get a copy of the matrix to ensure our plan is aligned with the goals of the Department of Labor?
At this point, I don't plan to have a matrix that is shared all information that I do have is out on the website. So you can see some of the contract terms that are out there, the final report that will be due, the application. So we put as many details as we can into that. I think that can provide a good foundation, but don't hesitate to reach out with questions.
Perfect.
And I think I would just add to that, like we have had applications that have already come in. So if we released out that scoring matrix now, that wouldn't be fair to the people that have already previously submitted because they didn't have an opportunity to look at that scoring matrix before submitting. The application period did open up on June 18th. So reminder then to deadline for this is August 7th. Be sure to email in if you have any questions after this. Put the email into the chat there. It's also out on the website, dlr.sd.gov/AI funding. So it has all the information Kendra went over. And then again, has that email link there. If you have questions, it also has the link to the actual application and the contract terms that Kendra mentioned as well, all on that website. So super excited to see this for South Dakota and can't wait to see where we go from here.
Yeah, it should be really amazing. And trying to keep everybody's time at mind here a little bit. We're going to go ahead with the closing statements and get everybody back onto their day. So first of all, thank you guys for attending today's Workforce Knowledge Series. On behalf of the Business Service Team, we want to thank our speakers, Sam, Kendra, Tanya, Hannah, Morgan, for providing us with some great information. We have a link to a survey in the chat. We'd appreciate it if you guys could take a moment and fill that out, give us some feedback on today's event. We're always looking for ways to improve our events, to better serve your needs. If you have any additional questions, please put them in the chat and we can forward them on to today's presenters and try to get those answers back to you as quickly as we can. Or like Tanya said, we do have that email address as well for any of the additional questions on the AI. Our next Workforce Knowledge Series will be held on August 13th. That topic will be Guarding the Gate, Cybersecurity Essentials for Protecting Employee Data. Again, staying in that cyber realm right now. So we're hoping you can join us for that event. We also have a virtual hiring event coming up on August 19th. So if you're looking for recruitment, please take advantage of that as well. On behalf of the Business Services Team with the South Dakota Department of Labor and Regulation, thank you for attending today's Workforce Knowledge Series, and we hope you have a great day and join us next month.